welcome to the CUPP, where we will be spilling all sorts of tea about what's going on inside Washington, D.C., what regulators and lawmakers are thinking about and working on, and what you and your credit union should be focused on in terms of risk areas and areas of opportunity. I'm Ann Petros, your host, also Vice President of Regulatory Affairs here at NAFCU, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by none other than Jim Nussle, who is President and CEO of CUNA. And now we've got some really big news. Right? The credit union industry was shook, to say the least, with the recent news about the NAFCU-CUNA merger on the horizon. And, you will be the lead of the new association, pending, of course, the vote and the process leading to that point. So is this a little surreal for you?
Because there's been so much conversation about a potential NAFCU-CUNA merger over the years, right. I'm sure there's probably some that are saying, seriously, it took you this long? And I'm sure there are others that are very surprised because right. It's, there have been moments in time where I know the marketplace, our credit unions have thought, well, it's like the Hatfields and the McCoys sometimes. So there's probably a little bit of both on either side. But the fact that we're on the couch together here, able to talk.
That's right.
And the fact that our boards are working so well together, that Dan and I are working on a transformation of this organization for the future so that we can serve the credit unions of the future, I think is really exciting. And I'm honored to be any degree of part of it because of the great work that our credit unions do for the people that they serve. So it's exciting more than probably anything else, I would say.
Absolutely. Well, as you mentioned, this concept of CUNA and NAFCU merging is nothing new. It's been a conversation for a while now. But, now that the boards have voted to make this a reality, some might be wondering, why now? Like you said, why did it take this long? Or, what about this moment is unique?
Yeah, why now indeed? Yeah. I mean, because you're right. Many of the things that the boards talked about that brought us to this moment in time are not new. So as I listened to the conversation, I tried to listen very carefully to what individual board members were thirsty for as they were thinking about the future. And there are things that are not groundbreaking. They said, how can we create one voice where we're presenting, whether it's to regulators or to policymakers, legislators, how do we present one consistent, relentlessly aggressive advocacy voice to policymakers? And that's pretty much, if you had to put all of the conversations into one bucket, that was the bucket it was in. And I think there's certainly differences between our organization that probably either made it difficult for board members of the past to maybe see that, and maybe even the board today to ensure that we don't lose the best of CUNA and the best of NAFCU. And so they were very, very direct with me and with Dan and with each other about, let's not create some CUNA 2.0 or a NAFCU 2.0. Let's create something big, bold, new, right. That took the best of and made it even better. And that's the marching orders. And I am excited because I think the teams that I've had a chance to talk with, both at CUNA and NAFCU, are all in for that. I mean, of course, there's always nervousness when there's a merger, and that's natural, right?
Right.
But I'll tell you what, the people who work at our two national trade associations, which will soon be one, are super passionate for credit unions, and that's not going to change. Hopefully, it'll even grow.
I'm sure it will. Yeah. But, all good things take time.
It does. Yeah. No question about it.
There's a transition process, and sure the kinks will be worked out in that process. But what, in your mind, are the actual benefits of a single national trade association? I mean, you talked about speaking with a single voice, right? Is that the primary benefit that credit unions can expect here? what really is the purpose?
Sure. I'll take it one step further. So my dad for 50 years, believe it or not, was a choir director. All right.
Okay.
So one voice is not what I think
Sure.
about when I think about creating one voice. I think of a choir. I think of how there's going to be differences of opinion. There's going to be different kinds of credit unions. There's going to be different regions of the country. There certainly are different members that we all serve. There are different ways to serve those members. There are going to be different challenges that we will see on the horizon from a policy standpoint, no question about it, let alone market disruption that's coming. So we don't need one voice. It will not be just one voice like Jim. It's a choir of voices across the country that hopefully are in harmony as much as possible, are well practiced and well rehearsed on the credit union difference, on why we do what we do, for whom we do it, and why that credit union difference is relevant long into the future in the way we serve our members and their financial well-being, or advancing their communities, or serving the credit union members of the future with whole new services and products that might be available. That's what I hope we can create. And I think that's what credit unions will expect. It's not one size fits all. It's a one coordinated voice that takes our credit union difference to policymakers in Washington. I think that's what they were looking for.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, not that CUNA and NAFCU have widely divergent views on issues. A lot of it is in alignment already. But, I agree with you that having a single entity through which to funnel, those views and perspectives and relay them to regulators and lawmakers is probably most effective.
No question about it. Plus, there are a lot of things that are different about our organizations that I just think of what you're doing here right now. NAFCU's communications have always been excellent, if not superior, when it comes to our national trade associations. You guys have just always done really well at communicating, not only to the general public, but also to policymakers and to credit unions. And this is a great example of it, where you have an opportunity to talk about policy, to talk with leaders. We were talking about former CFPB directors and others that have been here to talk. And I think that's something that when I think of one voice, that's what I hope we not only don't lose, but are able to build on. Right. I think those differences can be things that we take into the future and make even better.
Yeah, differences are not always a bad thing, right? And learning to leverage those differences to create something even better is kind of the dream, right?
Yeah,
so,
it really is.
Yeah. What would you say to those who maybe want to see hard numbers and data about, let's say, a cost-benefit analysis as to, why this merger is the best decision for the credit union industry? I mean, we talk to regulators and lawmakers all the time about cost-benefit analysis. Right. So what does that look like in this instance?
It's a fair question, and it's one that we're still working through. Obviously, if you go through a credit union merger, you go through due diligence, and it takes a while to get to that kind of bottom line of what's different, or what will be the economies of scale, things like that. Right. And we don't have that yet. I can't whip out a sheet and say, well, here's the actual numbers.
It's still pretty early.
It is very early. The good news is I think we're going to see them. We've seen it with other national associations, not necessarily obviously in financial services, but others, where they had multiple associations that were able to merge, and not only were able to show a value proposition that was stronger in let's say communications, creating that one voice, or in advocacy, but also were able to do it with an economy of scale that recognized that our members are, their dues dollars that they pay for this are pretty precious in this in this day and age, and they don't want them wasted. They don't want them squandered. They want to put lead on the target, as some people would say. And so we're going to go through the due diligence process and be able to present that at some point in the future. But the preliminary numbers that we've shown the board suggest that we're going to see some good strength and economy of scale as a result.
Excellent. All right. Let's talk about vision. So, what is your vision for America's credit unions? And how is this new association going to be different than CUNA and NAFCU? Now,
Right?
you said we don't want a 2.0 of either existing association. So, what does the brand new one look like?
Yeah. So we know what we don't want. So what do we want,
Exactly.
right? Yeah. Well, first of all, I've spent the last week in my basement dreaming this up, and I'm
Oh,
ready
all
to
right.
announce
Yeah.
what it is. No, actually, I say that to be facetious because I think now is actually a moment. So I certainly have some ideas. Don't misunderstand me. And I'm listening very carefully to our teams to understand what certainly NAFCU believes is their best and what CUNA believes is their best. But I also think this is an opportunity for us to listen to our members and our partners to say, what do you see? What do you want? What's important? What's valuable to you as you think about the future so that it's not just one person dreaming this up in their basement or a few of us in an echo chamber sitting around saying, this is what we think. Now is a moment to listen to our members very carefully and say, all right, where do you think the puck needs to be or will be, 8-10 years from now? And how do we make sure we skate, as Wayne Gretzky would say, to that puck, to get there before it even arrives and be as valuable as possible to credit unions of the future? And how do we build our team around that? How do we build our strategies around that? How do we resource that? Is the opportunity. So a couple of things that I think are probably table stakes. The board wants us to create one strong voice of communication. So that, it seems to me, is a job that is required. And I think everybody would say that, as I've done some just preliminary listening to members and just kind of getting feedback. They like that it's one and that we're together and we're stronger together and we're able to present that. Second, without suggesting these are
They're no particular order.
not in, but advocacy, how we take that one voice and then apply it to advocacy, to influence, which is what advocacy is about. How do we influence the policymaking process? And I think NAFCU and CUNA have both strong, very successful traditions when it comes to advocacy that we can put together. We bring a strength of grassroots and our connection to the states and the leagues. You bring a nimbleness and an aggressiveness and great communications and a real purposeful advocacy that we can learn from. And we can put that together and say, how can we build the best advocacy for the future? I think credit unions are already given very high marks, as you know.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah, when it comes to whether it's regulators or on Capitol Hill, when it comes to advocacy. But I am not suggesting we have hit the pinnacle yet. I mean, we've got an opportunity to build on this, and we're going to have to. As you know, the policymaking process is getting even more complicated, sometimes even more dysfunctional, and our ability to disrupt that or to influence that has got to be job one.
Right.
And then the third is, what are the services that are truly impactful and valuable to the credit unions of the future that they really can't get from someone else? How do we become not only continue to be thought leaders, but also the place where, as the cooperative principles suggest, the place where all the cooperatives can come together and solve problems and to be that network, if you will, to say, what can we do together that is better than what we could do separately? So those are just three kind of areas I would look at. Okay. But I don't want to build it in my basement. I cannot wait to continue to get more feedback from members about what they think is valuable and what they want.
Yeah, so we want a lean and efficient association that provides strong advocacy and provides the services that credit unions need and want and maybe can't get elsewhere, is what I'm taking away from this. But
that's a start, right?
Yeah. How do credit unions get in touch with you and share their perspectives and what they want to see?
Well, both NAFCU and CUNA, I'm told, are building an opportunity for just that kind of feedback on our websites so that you can not only get information about the merger, but also be able to influence that. Plus, you've got to vote. I mean, obviously, the credit unions...
That's part of it,
right?
Yeah.
And I know as a recovering politician that you not only have to ask for the vote, but people, before they give the vote, they want to know they've been heard. And I think we're going to go out and do a lot of listening at a number of events that are already being scheduled. I'm going to be, I know, in 12 states that I'm aware of, just on my calendar in the next few weeks to a month.
Wow, that's a busy travel schedule. But it's necessary.
It's what you need to do, right? Yeah. I mean, having been like I say, a recovering office holder myself, the doors you knock on are pretty important, but the one you miss is a vote that you miss. So we're going to do our best to try and reach out and listen to as many credit union leaders as possible. And we want them to feel like they've had an influence in the future design of the very important national association that they are creating.
Yeah, this is their association.
This is theirs, yeah. Well, we run a member association or just member organization just like they do, and they know how important it is to listen to their members. So
exactly. Yeah. All right. So why should credit unions support this merger? What is your elevator pitch, right? Aside from what we've already covered. It certainly is the one voice, and then it's the impactful, relentless advocacy that actually can be measured and can move the needle in Washington, D.C. and across the various states. It's recognizing that our credit union industry and movement is one of the few industries that has not had the complete overhaul and disruption that many industries have had. Ours is coming still. Believe it or not, for those that feel like they've already been disrupted, there's more to come in financial services. And how do we position credit unions in the best possible place? Not because of the organization, but because of the people. Because that's what this is, as we all know. It's people serving people, helping people, making a difference in their financial lives. And that's what we want to be able to ensure that all credit unions are prepared for. So that's the reason, to have one place you can do that and to not have it diluted in any way, shape, or form. So, all right. Well, that's pretty convincing, I think. So we'll see how the members feel about it as we move forward. But it sounds like you're encouraging everyone to share their thoughts, reach out to NAFCU, reach out to CUNA, and provide your perspective ahead of this vote.
And I don't, and the only thing I would just add is that I don't want it to just be happy talk about it's great that you're coming together.
Right.
This is truly an opportunity to say, okay, I like what you do here, do more of this. Or I really have not been very fond of what you did over here, do less of that. So there's a little bit start, stop, do more, do less, that we hope people will reflect on as they think about what their credit union, what their teams need, and what their members need for the future.
Yeah. You want candid feedback,
we really
not just
do.
lip service.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Well, let's transition a little bit into some policy related questions. There's a lot going on, both on the legislative side and on the regulatory side. Credit unions face a number of challenges when it comes to specifically non-interest income, including, legislative efforts to expand interchange fees for one, regulatory efforts to limit so-called junk fees. I hate that term.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
In your opinion, having been a lawmaker before, what do you think is the motivation behind these efforts? Like, why now? What is the impetus?
Yeah, I mean, the answer. It's money, right? Yeah. They're looking for money, and they're these days the margins are so thin that any penny here or a penny there, really in anything, transactions or price, really does impact people's bottom line, whether you're a credit union or you're a merchant. And so there is this battle going on. The difference, though, is what we've discovered, and I think this is true for both CUNA-NAFCU and other independent studies that have been done. The merchants aren't passing the savings on to the consumers themselves. We haven't seen that. They're pocketing it, and I don't know if that's really all that surprising. I mean, there's gambling in Las Vegas. Of course, they're going to pocket every penny that they can. But the point is that, so don't kid us. Don't fib to us us that, in fact, this is about, the merchants. What we're doing is we're paying for everything from security. We're paying for the cost of providing this important service so that members can actually ride the rails of payments, which, if they didn't, would cause all sorts of havoc within the economy. And so, I think that this is a money grab for merchants by and large, the big box ones in particular. And that's what's going on.
So it's not really an issue of competition.
No, well, they say it is, but it's, it really isn't. That's
their sales pitch.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that, and, they're being squeezed, and, that's funny because to me, at least, it's having been on the other side of the desk as a member of Congress, listening to this, to hear the big box retailers coming in using the small businesses on Main Street as their kind of human shield for this is really atrocious. But they're doing it. Right. And I think we have been very effective, credit unions, in ensuring not only that we were delivering the message, but backing it up with good data, studies, exactly where has the money gone, how has it worked. And as a result, I think we're winning right now. If they win this, if the merchants somehow win this, it's going to be a sneak attack. It's not going to be a full frontal assault on the merits. It's going to be somebody like Durbin, again, sneaking this into something at the last minute when nobody's looking, and then having a must-pass bill. That's
exactly
right?
Yeah. People are not going to want to compromise in the 11th hour and try to sort it all out again. Yeah.
So that signals to me that they don't have the facts on their side. They don't have the data on their side. They need a policymaker who's whatever, just basically kowtowing to them and sneaking it in the middle of the night. That's the only way they're going to win. Because I don't know the total numbers, but I heard over the weekend we've already put over 70,000 messages onto Capitol Hill.
Wow.
When it comes from credit union folks who are just saying, protect us here, help us with this. We want to be able to provide this service to our members and protect their data. So as a result, I think we're doing well. Well, we got to plan and look for that sneak attack.
And on the regulatory side of things with the junk fees, any thoughts there?
Well, junk fee, as you know, is a political phrase. There's there are junk fees, I suppose, but they're fees that nobody sees. They're not transparent. They're snuck into a hotel bill here or a gym membership there.
Do they really
or a cable
exist
bill.
in the financial services
They don't,
industry?
because we have to be so transparent in every fee that's charged.
There are laws
It's
for
all
that.
delineated. Yeah. And so you're exactly right. It's there are junk fees in the world, but not in financial services because of the regulation that we have and the fact that we are very transparent with our members about what these things cost them.
So on both of these topics, and really any issue, I mean, how are NAFCU, CUNA, the leagues, and credit unions best able to share the potential impacts of these policies or proposed policies, the impacts that they could have on their institutions and communities?
Well, we do it together. I mean, that's the first thing. The somewhat dirty secret, it's not a dirty secret, is that over the last year in particular, CUNA and NAFCU have been coordinating a lot of these activities already. We kind of knew things were being discussed, and so our board said, hey, let's work a little bit more closely together on this. Don't look for differences, look for similarities, and we've done that. Together with the leagues, who have done an excellent job, I think it still comes down to our formula of influence, which is tell a really good story about how this impacts the daily lives of people and their financial well-being. Back it up with data. I mean, don't just tell a good story. Back that story up with data so that they can show the impact, not only in their credit union, but across maybe in a macro sense, the economy as a whole. And then ask for the sale. And whether that's at the local level, we got August recess going on right now, and all of these members of Congress and senators are home. They're already starting to campaign. They're certainly doing public forums. That's a great opportunity to go, stick your finger in their chest and say, hey, I want you to know what this does. And so, and then you've got the NAFCU Congressional Caucus coming up in September. A number of league hike the hills that are going to happen. It's September. So a number of credit union voices are going to be coming to Washington in September to talk about this at a very critical time, because as you know, this is where a lot of the final decisions of the year are being formulated. So with all of those together, I think we've got some impact that we're going to be able to bring to bear.
Yeah, absolutely. Data is critical, and I know NAFCU did a comprehensive survey on the junk fees and credit card late fees issue. I know CUNA got a lot of data as well that they included in their comment letter, and providing those stories that about the impacts to your members are really important for regulators to hear. We had a grassroots push, and I think hundreds of credit unions submitted their own letters and stories to the CFPB. I mean, just like you do on Capitol Hill, it's important to have that same engagement with regulators, because it's one thing for them to hear from us, right? We're lobbyists; they hear from us all the time. It's not as exciting, but when they're hearing directly from the institutions that they regulate, it seems to make a difference.
Well, and from their homes. I mean, so many of these members of Congress and regulators are members of a credit union. I mean, it's pretty cool when it comes right down to it. So they know, because of how often we've been doing this, we're not strangers. I mean, we have a trusted brand, not only in the marketplace for financial services, but a trusted brand when it comes to advocacy. Right. And they can rely on what we tell them, the data we provide, the stories that we tell. And as a result, I think we can have a lot of impact. So.
And what's your advice to credit unions as they try to prepare, risk management strategies and potential alternatives to maybe some of these fees? I mean, overdraft is another area that's gotten a lot of attention. The CFPB has been sort of on this pressure campaign. So how do you think about alternatives and preparing for, that risk?
Well, first of all, I've said, and I think this is true, at least from my experience, it's true, that we have to win this battle before anybody will take us, I was about to say take us seriously, but just invite us to the table if there's going to be any future look at payments and things like that. We've got to beat them at this game. We got to beat them so they don't put something into a bill or sneak something across. So that's number one. Second, there have been a number of great forums at the state level, at the national level, NAFCU, CUNA, that have talked a little bit about how they can share best practices and ways, because everyone is going through this. It's not unique. There's not a credit union someplace that has just woke up and discovered that they need to have alternatives. Everyone's talking about this. So there are a number of great forums that are going on that where this is being problem solved, and where people are. That's the one unique thing about credit unions. We share the good things. We also share our misery and come up with solutions to that as we go forward. So I think there's a lot of good things happening in that area.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. I always learn a lot when I talk to credit union leaders, and so just that networking and engagement with your peers can definitely change your perspective and
my guess is, are you doing that at the Congressional Caucus? Will there be some of that?
We will, yes, definitely. Specifically at our large credit union summit, we have a number of roundtables planned for that. We have a compliance roundtable, general counsel roundtable, and a chief risk officer roundtable. Some of those will run concurrently, but the goal is to engage in that sort of networking, idea sharing, and strategizing. Really, like, how do we approach this together in a collaborative fashion that makes our industry well positioned to tackle these issues and put up a united front.
And that's, I think, the difference, because there's a lot of, I know you probably have heard this too. You go to a lot of other conferences or you talk to colleagues in other industries, and we don't hear about those industries sharing information, data, problem solving the way credit union leaders are willing to do. And so it'll be exciting to hear a little bit about how that goes as you go forward too. So
yes,
yeah.
absolutely. Another issue that credit unions are dealing with is, related to liquidity and interest rate risk. Obviously, given economic changes, following the pandemic, it's been a challenging few years, to
It
say the
has,
least.
yeah.
So, do you think that regulators have been understanding of the difficulties that credit unions are facing, and have they been helpful along the way?
Well, I mean, I think that you could say the jury is still out. NCUA kind of came into it, I'm going to say, a little late, but they at least showed up and provided an opportunity to at least ensure that credit unions and leaders knew that they were going to take that into consideration. I think that's important. The other good news, and the economic data continues to come in, and I think our folks have chewed on it and given some perspective on this as well, is that it seems to be ebbing, which is good news too.
That's right.
That some of the recession risks are not as prevalent as they were maybe a year ago at this time. That everything from, as some might say, the stimulus combined with what the Fed has done has provided a certain softer landing, or maybe completely soft landing to a recession. So again, that hopefully will reduce some of that risk, but it's still out there, and making sure that, as you say, our regulators recognize that and work with our folks is something we need to keep pressuring them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, economic conditions are certainly improving. The severity, I guess, of
right.
interest rate hikes is not as high, and the chances of a recession, I guess, are lower than we thought a year or so ago. And so things are looking up, but there still are some difficulties, especially in conveying to regulators and lawmakers that credit unions are in a unique position, and there are some statutory limitations, for example, that make it particularly difficult for credit unions to compete in environments like this. Are there any potential improvements that come to mind for you, to the Federal Credit Union Act or state laws that could help credit unions better navigate, these uncertain times?
Yeah, so yes, and a number of those bills, as you know, both NAFCU and CUNA have had introduced, and they're working their way through everything from expanding the fields of membership, but I think you're right about the issue. We credit unions, probably different now than ever before, are really at the tip of the spear when it comes to how consumers are navigating the difficulty of any economic changes or challenges, because they tend to be the place. So many banks, small banks in particular, have left the field, and larger banks aren't even servicing smaller borrowers anymore. And so it's really credit unions that have moved into that position. And so I think one thing our policymakers and even our members of Congress are not yet as sensitive to as they could be is that there is no longer the equality between credit unions and banks when it comes to consumer finance. Credit unions are filling that gap. Yeah. We are the small town, the small community, the small neighborhood lender. The other ones have left. Right. And so they have to recognize that anything that provides us maybe a traditional legacy barrier to providing that finance is going to make it difficult for that community to be successful, or those individual consumers to be successful, managing their financial well-being, managing their daily lives, affording their lives, are all things that credit unions do now that used to be either equal or even the prerogative of a lot of us small town community lenders. They're just not there anymore. They've been gobbled up. And especially you think of my state of Iowa, those small banks, they're gone, or they're now part of a regional bank, and it's much different. So I think making sure that they recognize that as we continue to push many of these policy changes is something we need continue to do a better job of communicating. So
I do think CUNA and NAFCU are both very effective in highlighting that difference, especially during the pandemic with the PPP loans, for example, right? The member business lending cap is in place, but credit unions, were able to step up and meet that challenge and meet consumers where they were at to provide the really critical loans that these small businesses on Main Street, needed
and couldn't get anywhere else.
Right.
Because
banks were
weren't
saying no thanks.
Exactly.
This isn't worth my time, and I've got better investments to make in my communities, more lucrative, right, profitable investments. But obviously that's not what credit unions are about.
Right. Yeah, it's the old adage about, banks lending to people who actually don't need to borrow was very true during that phase. And a lot of the especially, new businesses that are often built in your basement or your garage that are 1 or 2 employees, usually, mom and pop, as they used to say, they don't have a line of credit anywhere. So being able to go someplace and start that off, that is seeding the economy of the future. And because every business was built in somebody's basement or garage, it wasn't, very, very often or very seldom does it start with 100 employees.
Yeah. You see a lot of the businesses in Silicon Valley, right? They started in a garage
literally
somewhere, actually.
Apple, Microsoft, right. So that's exactly right. And I don't know if I don't know if that's something that policymakers have the sensitivity to that. And that's our job. How do we continue to tell that story, backing it up with data, using those, not only the stories of individuals, but the impact it has on the communities is something that we're going to continue to press on. So,
yeah. All right. Another topic that has been gaining a lot of attention and has been a focal point, certainly for this administration, is climate-related risk, issues surrounding ESG policies. NAFCU and CUNA both agree that the NCUA is not and should not be a climate regulator in this space. But if it's not the NCUA, then who is it, right? What agency is best equipped to step in and regulate in this space? And, on a more macro level, how do we as a society and as an industry manage and mitigate this risk that for a lot of communities is very real, as we see increasing incidents of climate related disasters?
Yeah. I don't know.
It's a hard question.
To your second question is really good, and I don't know. But I'll tell you my belief about your first part of the question is that who is best to regulate that. This may sound corny, but I really do believe we the people. I mean, that's where credit unions gain their strength and their regulation. With all due respect to all the regulators that think they're regulating financial services, the best is still the member, is still the consumer member who walks in the front door and says, this is what I want and this is how I want it. Or I'm leaving because you're not providing it. That's still the best regulation out there is the people themselves determining what's best. So when I think about ESG, whether it's the environment or social responsibility or governance, I think about the member first and what do they expect? How do they already regulate that? It doesn't mean that credit unions can't and shouldn't be able to fill gaps, particularly in some of the environmental lending that is out there, that is the future in a number of communities. And again, we have those policy statements and ways that we think that can be expanded. But I really still do believe that the best regulator is the consuming public and the members who our credit unions serve and listen to very keenly about what they expect, what they want, and what's important, what's their priority for the future. So
I think you may have actually answered the second question.
Did I?
It's collaboration, right, within the industry, setting standards, setting, policies and guidelines that are going to allow the industry to develop, transparent processes that they can share with their members about, this is our policy on ESG and this is how we're going to move forward and this is what's important to us and managing this risk internally and how we work with our communities,
Yeah.
right? If it comes from the ground level, so to speak, and credit unions working together, networking and developing standards independently, they're probably going to stick to those standards.
Right. So I agree, and I hope policymakers will understand that as well. But you know as well as I do that they're going to want to act, right?
Right. They're going to want to step in.
Here's our regulator that's going to do that, or here's our agency that's going to do this. And that's true not only at the federal level, it's true at the state level too. So there will be a number of efforts to try and look like they're solving it. By creating something or passing a policy. And most of that will get in the way and disrupt the relationship that we have consumer to credit union or consumer to anything. So I think we're both saying the same thing. And I hope that we're able to show leadership. I think we have. I believe that will be enough. But having watched these folks for a while, I think they're going to try and Bigfoot it with some kind of one-size-fits-all public policy. That's their tendency always, and we've got to figure out a way to some extent, instruct them and push them in the right direction.
Right, because that one-size-fits-all approach always leads to great policy, right?
Right. That's always worked.
Yeah, so let's avoid that if we can. Any parting remarks for our viewers and listeners today?
I think I would go back to the issue of this is your association, right? And that's how credit unions were formed. Back when the first credit union was formed, from mill workers up in New Hampshire coming together saying, let's solve a problem. That's what a national association is. It's the folks coming together. It's people. It's not a credit union is people. So people have to come together and they have to say, this is what we believe should be the priority. And so this is an opportunity, this is a unique opportunity that does not come around that often, where members of this association and a future association can say, these should be the priorities. And there are so many ways to do that. You can obviously seek out me. I put my cell phone and email out for the public. You're welcome to share it as well. That's one way. We're all represented on boards. So there are members of the CUNA board, NAFCU board, that are representative of constituents across the country. They, I know, are thirsty to hear what people are thinking about. And then there's going to be a number of forums. Some will be virtual, some will be in person, where you have the opportunity to ask questions or to say, look, this is an opportunity to reset some priorities. This is what I think is important for the next 5, 10, 20 years into the future. So, because relevance, I will tell you, the one thing that I continue to hear from leaders is we want credit unions to be relevant for years to come.
Absolutely.
And our national association should be helping lead that effort. And I hope that people will engage in this process as a result.
Yes, I hope so as well. And so this is your moment. This is the time to, speak on behalf of your institution on what you think is important in the industry and share your perspectives on what you want to see from America's credit unions. Soon to be here.
Soon to be.
Yeah. So thank you so much,
and thank
Jim.
you.
This has
Well
been
done.
a great conversation. Thank you to all of our viewers and listeners for tuning in to this very special episode with Jim Nussle as we discuss the NAFCU-CUNA merger and policy issues that are important to your institutions. If you enjoy watching and listening to the CUPP, please subscribe, hit the like button, turn on your notifications so you get alerts about new episodes, and provide us your recommendations on what you want to hear about next. We love hearing from you and look forward to seeing you on a future episode. So until next time.